Welcome to the Phantom Zone.
And now, comics.
All right, hello, welcome to And Now Comics. I'm Lou Gonzalez, joined by John Seiler.
Coming to you live from Bar Sinister.
Oh,
Ooh, good one.
yeah, but which Sinister are you?
I mean the one in the background that's not that's trying not to get killed.
Yeah, and Connor Irving.
Hey, I'm the Sinister with the really cool cape.
Oh, awesome. All right, so I guess we'll go through a couple of news stories first before we do our deep dive into Powers and House 4.
As the cool kids call it, Hoxpox.
Yep.
Is that really?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like if
Yep.
you see people like writing about it online, they call it Hoxpox.
Fucking nerds.
That's yeah. I mean,
Like,
come on.
Yeah, that's like when people called Xbox One like Xbone, and I'm just like,
I still call it X-Bone,
I'm
dude.
just,
Dude,
It's
I
my
called it
X-Boner.
I called it Xbone yesterday.
Yeah.
Is
It's
it
a lot
really that much-
it's a lot easier than calling it Xbox One
Yeah.
or original Xbox because it's not either of those.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
Xbox.
wait, no one calls it original Xbox. Original Xbox is the original Xbox.
But
Well,
I
that's
mean
the thing.
like
You have to make the distinction.
yeah. It's like when I worked at a shop, people are like, "Oh, I'm bringing in an Xbox." I'm like, "Well, which Xbox?" I'm like Xbox One. You know, I'm like, "Well,
Like, which one?
Xbox One or Xbox Original?" And they're like,
Yeah.
"Uh."
Yeah.
Yeah,
When I worked at
nobody has an
GameStop,
X-
they did that all the fucking time.
Yeah.
So I would always just call it Xbone because it's a lot easier just to say Xbone and know what people are talking about.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess from
It's
my
not-
time
it's
working at
not- it's-
GameStop, I hated it.
It's not my fault that Microsoft called their console the Xbox One and made it so easy to just call it the Xbone.
No,
I mean,
no, it's-
their launch was rough.
no, the problem was
Xbone
that they
was
named the
rough.
360 the 360 and not the 2.
Yeah.
Because if they just named it the 2, then this would be the Xbox 3. But the problem is then they were like, well, if we have a 3 and PlayStation has a 4, then ours looks shittier. That's the entire reason for their entire naming things.
Mm-hmm.
But we really deep.
I mean, yeah, we did. Let's get back on track. Let's talk about comic books.
Yes. So the first one here is not. I don't think it really affects any of us because none of us are really reading any Conan stuff. But kind of related to Conan is one of the other Robert E. Howard characters, and I guess they're kind of building out this dark. What do they call this? It's
A dark universe.
yeah. I guess it's like the Conan universe, or like this dark. I don't know why they just don't call it like the Conan universe, but they're using some other term, Dark Agnes, Agnes.
No, that's a character. That's a character.
That's a character. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought it was like a way to call this universe. All right, so there's gonna be a Conan book, Conan the Barbarian, Savage Sword of Conan, Age of Conan, Bellet.
No,
And
those books are already out.
Yeah. So like those are the ones they're out, and then they're adding to that Solomon Kane, Dark Agnes, and I guess some more that they haven't announced. Which Solomon Kane, I have very, very little memories of that character. He's like a witch hunter, right? And then they do like a really shitty movie in like the late 90s, early 2000s.
They did. But yeah, so I have a
Okay.
friend.
Who's
I have a friend
in
I
this
follow.
movie?
I have a
Oh,
friend that
God.
I follow who's like super into like Conan, and like all that Robert E. Howard stuff. But yeah, it's like Solomon King. He's like a witch hunter,
This movie was
supernatural.
10, this movie's 10 years ago. I thought it was in the 90s.
No, that movie came out in the 2000s. He's basically Van Helsing, but like during
Oh,
like during the Puritan era.
Yes, and he has a giant hat. Like, I feel like this movie came out around the same time as that Van Helsing movie.
Dark Agnes is basically Red Sonja.
So
Like,
they just they don't have the rights to Darks to her, or
like, well, from what my friend said, like Roy Thomas took the name Red Sonja and slapped it on Dark Agnes Swordwoman, and that's how the character was born.
oh,
Neither Solomon Kane or Dark Agnes are connected to Conan, though. unless Marvel wants to construct some sort of Howard verse, they are set in very different time periods. But
Well, yeah. Well, Solomon
as
Kane takes
I,
place way later. Isn't he supposed to be a descendant of Conan, though?
I have no idea. I don't think so. But like we've seen Conan in his own time. He's currently hanging out with Punisher and a couple other people in Savage Avengers. They also announced that Conan is going to be having his own 2099 book when they do those 2099 books in November.
Oh.
So Conan has been quite the time traveler. So it wouldn't surprise me if they.
It just a very old SNL sketch just popped into my head, which was like the caveman lawyer.
Oh yeah.
But like, and I like Conan, but I'm pretty sure I'll have to look it up. I think that he wrote that there's like a lineage, and I can't remember what Conan's father's name is because that was also a very shitty movie with Kevin Sorbo.
It's a Bonan. Bonan the Barbarian.
What the hell is his name? I can't remember it, but they made like a shitty movie because
I like that there was like no sell on that joke.
Yeah, I tried. I really did.
Like,
that was
neither of us were just like, I got nothing.
Yeah, I tried. I'm sorry.
But like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I feel like Conan has always had some kind of interpretation or some movie or something to kind of keep it within like the public consciousness for like a good long time. And I just kind of just don't know like what a modern interpretation of like or like what people now would like want out of a Solomon Kane book. And like you have Red Sonja, who's also just like permeated like the mainstream as like that kind of character. They have like Marvel to do like this character named Agnes. It's like Dark Agnes is like not as cool like on a page as Red Sonja.
Yeah, because so I just like looked at the wiki. Now I remember the thing. So their world is the Hyperion Age world. That's where Conan is from. And then yeah, they've just been I feel like it's just always like these like movie or TV things, and because they're like the sword, what do they call it? Like sword and magic, or I can't remember. Like whatever.
Sword and Sandals.
Sword and Sandals. They like kind of Game of Thrones kicked that back up, so that's why they're kind of pushing this.
And I mean, like, and Solomon Kane and Dark Agnes are brands, and you know, and they're not good brands, but it's like you have like all these people who own licenses, and they're basically just trying to see like whatever they can like, you know, get into a major brand. Like that's why you have a Playmobil movie, because it's like, oh, the Lego movie did good. Well, what do we have? That's like the Lego movie. We got Playmobil. You know, let's do Playmobil and see if that, you know, kicks off a Playmobil universe. And it didn't, because no one really kind of cares.
It doesn't have the love and attention, you know, like that the Lego movie got. Like
that's why you had Solomon Kane movie in 2005. Because it's like, oh, dark superheroes are really big right now. What superhero do we have like in our you know,
repertoire?
Using superhero is a very broad term there.
But I mean, it's like of like comic book movies are big. Like, what comic book do we have like in our bullpen? Like, oh, I got this Solomon Kane thing, and then like some 80-year-old, you know, movie exec's like, oh, I remember Solomon Kane. I used to read those comics when I was like a wee lad, you know, or I bought them for 5 cents or something, you know. Like that's why you got Dick Tracy movie in 1990, and then you had The Phantom and The Shadow. Because it was all old men like trying to like make movies off of things that they loved.
Yeah, it's all those pulp comic characters.
Because Batman got big, and they're like, "Well, what do we have that's like Batman?"
Well, Dick Tracy is not like I haven't seen it in a long time, but I feel like it's not as bad because it's so cartoony.
It's of an age,
and the cast is insane. Like the cast compared to the other ones is crazy. Like Al Pacino is in that movie, and like the amount of Oscars in that movie is insane.
Yeah, which made that like that I forgot who wrote it this week, but they were like, oh, like will Joker break the trend of Oscar-worthy comic book movies? And it's like, didn't Heath Ledger win an Academy Award for Joker like a decade ago?
Yeah.
And then people are like, well, what about Dick Tracy? Like, Dick Tracy won like 3 Oscars.
Yeah, what about like Into the Spider-Verse winning last year, or
Or
I don't
Black
know.
Panther being nominated last year, or
for Best Picture, nonetheless.
Dark Knight was nominated for Best Picture. It's like it's just
It's just Hollywood doesn't. They just don't respect the genre stuff. Is what it is.
Well, no, I think specifically that article was just like
It's
trying to
also-
make something that was super clickbaity to get people to share the article, and of course they did, because people are pointing out why it's wrong, but then in doing so they also shared the article. So it's like, they knew what they were doing.
Okay, I just wanted to go through like the cast of Dick Tracy because it's the same. Because you got Warren Beatty, who was else? Madonna, obviously. Mandy Patinkin has like a nothing role in it. Paul Sorvino, Al Pacino, Dustin Hoffman, Kathy Bates, Dick Van Dyke,
God,
James Caan.
Ice-T had a song on the soundtrack.
Really?
Wasn't Madonna in that movie?
Yeah, she's a major character.
Like,
What?
why isn't... And Madonna's not even on the soundtrack. Like,
Yeah,
a
this was like her.
like
this
a
was like
Razor
her
is
big,
on.
No, she tried to break into acting for a long time.
No, this is like when she was like a big actress at the time. Like this was like, because what year is this?
I don't know.
90.
She's not a big actress in
No,
1990.
this is
This
like,
is like-
her doing this in like League of Their Own, and it can't be long after this that she did Evita.
No, Evita was like 97.
Evita was 96.
Okay, so it's a couple years after.
Excuse me.
Sorry, no, I got curious because I was looking up Madonna on IMDb. That's why I have that just immediately.
Oh yeah,
Top of my head.
Desperately Seeking Susan, Shanghai Surprise. Yeah, she was doing movies at this time.
I mean, she's still doing movies.
Oh god, Shanghai Surprise. It's the one she did with Sean Penn.
Yeah, she like dated Sean. Wasn't she
No, they were
married to Sean
married.
Penn?
They were married.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to see what was her first stupid movie. Her IMDb is like way too big.
Yeah,
because she has
well,
like
because-
so many goddamn things.
Vision Quest, 1990,
Vision Quest.
Wait, really?
1985.
Oh,
Starring Matthew Modine, Linda Florentino.
yeah, it's the
Ronnie
track.
Cox.
It's the running movie. It's a good movie.
I'm more of a Madonna like Material Girl music fan than I am like any of her
like
movies really.
the early '80s. Well, like League of Their Own is good. Dick Tracy, I think, is good. I have not seen it in a long time. I don't know any of these other movies.
Yeah, I remember Dick Tracy being like kind of wild. Like the color scheme and
Oh yeah, it's
prosthetics.
it's the big difference between it and like those other movies where it's like they're like the prosthetics are like all over the place, and like, yeah, Dustin Hoffman plays Mumbles and he's getting cement poured all over him. Like,
God,
it's
Dick Van
completely
Dyke's in
cartoonish.
this movie.
Yeah, the cast is crazy. And there's a reason that we are not talking about Solomon Kane, is because I feel like Solomon Kane is like a shitty
I'm having more fun just running through Madonna's IMDb than I am actually talking about Solomon Kane.
Solomon Kane's like a shitty version of Castlevania, because I believe he has a whip, doesn't he?
I mean, like, I think like Van Helsing is a pretty apt description of Solomon Kane.
Okay. Because I was gonna say that there is a human counterpart, and it is Van Helsing. And why did Van Helsing never pick up? That movie was mildly good.
Oh, have you rewatched that? No, it is not.
Not recently. I have not recently watched that.
It's really not.
I like that both of us at the same time. If we were in the same room, we would have looked at each other, just be like, "No." I fell asleep during that movie.
That movie is so like. I know we're going on a tangent, but we can't not talk. That movie is like. The problem that movie has is that like 4 movies. It was. I think it's the first attempt at the Dark Universe bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
They use character. They start the movie with a character that's not even a universal monster, which is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And then it just jumps all over the place. If you rewatch that movie, the only character that's interesting is Frankenstein, like the monster. None of the other characters are interesting whatsoever.
Well, okay, so it's really funny because like that movie's also directed by the same guy who did The Mummy. And
Yes.
it has like the exact kind of same feel as The Mummy, but like while The Mummy I feel like still kind of holds up as like a really fun
Well, it's a fun
adventure
adventure
film.
flick, yeah.
Like
It-
Van Helsing is kind of like everything bad about early 2000s movies.
Well, one of the big things is I don't think, and I could get killed from this, Hugh Jackman is good in certain types of movies. And the problem is if you could listen to like any of this stuff, how this is get made in an episode, Hugh Jackman did not want this to be the Brendan Fraser Mummy. He wanted this to be like a straight up action flick, like Van Helsing, like Wolverine is Van Helsing, and there was lots of issues with it. They actually like CGI'd a part of it because he wanted to be completely naked in it. And so if you watch that movie, it's like it's just so it has like 5 or 6 acts in that movie. It is so weird. It's actually very similar to Hellboy, the new one, like where it's jumping around from like these vignettes as opposed to being like a complete movie.
Oh, really? I haven't seen the new Hellboy yet because I'm scared.
Yeah, I watched it last week. No.
Oh, really?
And I actually, it's for me personally, I think it looks worse than the other ones. Like, I think the visuals.
Oh, dude,
visuals
Hellboy's face
are-
looks fucked up. Like I've been saying
it's
that
not even
since it
that.
came
Like,
out.
it's all CGI.
Oh,
Except
man,
for like,
really?
I think one character is practical, and it looks like
Garbage.
And it's also, but the thing is, it's like it's vignette. It's like 7 Hellboy stories in one movie.
That's so unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. The only character I think they did really good is, I'm sure it's not. Do you know anything about the movie, Connor?
No, I know. Like Lobster Johnson's in it.
Okay, that was I was going to say. Like,
Yeah.
he's the only thing that's like whatsoever redeeming is that like he comes out perfect.
Okay, well that's because it's really hard to fuck up Lobster Johnson.
You would say it would be hard to fuck up a giant red demon boy who punches the shit out of monsters and shoots them with a gun, but they do.
How did they fuck up Hellboy? It's so easy.
Because the writing is terrible. It's really
Ah.
it's written terribly.
Oh, good.
Which there's been lots of stuff come out that like the issues that they had on set with Ed Harbour and Ian McShane were apparently trying to rewrite stuff and having issues, but both claim that that's not true. But
Oh, god damn.
Ian
Okay.
McShane's like in like 10 minutes of the movie,
Is he?
like all together. Yes, he's in like 3 scenes, maybe 4.
Oh shit. That sucks. That really does suck.
And I love him, but I don't think he's a good Professor Broom.
No,
Professor
I
Broom.
never thought he would have been either.
And I love him, but like it's kind of hard to compare of what we got with John Hurt. Like he
Yeah,
was
well-
kind of perfect.
Yeah, well, we also got Guillermo del Toro to do it, which is
know,
like the
like-
perfect. That's like the movie equivalent of Mike Mignola.
Well, he's better.
Well, yeah, he's
he
better.
is like a monster designer. Like that's what he does. That's what you get him for.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, exactly. And it worked perfectly. Like it was a fusion of both styles perfectly because everybody knows Guillermo del Toro has a style.
I kind of love a book of Guillermo del Toro like movie projects that didn't work, like or didn't
Oh my God.
happen,
His
I'm-
Hobbit.
and just
Yeah.
like devote like a chapter of just like what the original idea was, what the spec script was, like general
was-
idea. Because
There
like
is a
I
podcast about that stuff that I've actually been listening to a bunch of episodes. It's called
Oh no
Best,
way!
Best Movies Never Made.
Cool. Does it
One
talk
of the
about
funnest-
his Mountain of
Yeah.
Madness?
No, they did not talk about the
Ah.
Toro, but one of the ones that they did talk about, if I can find, because they talked about a Godzilla, Neil Marshall's Pendragon. Oh, it was. Let me see if I can get this guy's name right. It was like a guy that worked on a bunch of stuff with H.R. Geiger,
okay.
Oh,
and it
okay.
was Dead Star. It was called, and basically it got turned into another movie after like a decade. But basically, Event Horizon ripped off this movie, and it was going to be very
Oh.
similar to that, but everything designed by H.R. Geiger.
Oh,
Oh,
wow. Okay,
damn.
wow. I'm looking
That would
at
have
Yes.
been awesome.
I'm looking at this podcast right now, and there's like a couple of them I've definitely like heard or like I've read stories about.
The Jurassic
But-
Park one is very fun. Most of them they try to get on someone that's actually done stuff with the movie, but they did a 4-part and like all the Spider-Man movies that never got made.
What's the podcast called again? Sorry.
Best movies never made.
Okay.
Is the Jurassic Park 4 movie the one where they have the dinosaur human hybrids?
They talk about that, and that apparently was never in any sort of script. During some sort of pitch meeting, the guy just sketched those while sitting there while they were throwing around ideas. Because the actual thing is actually like an awesome idea, but that them train, it's kind of a lot of stuff when you listen to them talk about the script is stuff that went into Jurassic World about them like genetically engineering dinosaurs to use as military weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically have a trainer, like they basically take 2 characters, and that's what Chris Pratt's character is.
Yeah.
To train a team of velociraptors as a Black Ops unit.
Yeah, this sounds familiar. I think I've heard about this.
But yeah, I've read stuff about like James Cameron's really awful Spider-Man movie.
Oh yeah, that's in the 3rd or the 4th part of the Spider-Man thing,
Oh,
where Electro is basically Kingpin, except he can never turn it off, and his girlfriend wears a rubber suit and he gets pissed off. And he ends up like electrocuting her to death. But then since he's electric, he like defibrillates her back to life.
What?
Yes.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
they have
really dark and sexual.
So hyped.
But yeah, they have an episode about the Mountains of Madness. It looks like they did an episode about Beetlejuice goes Hawaiian. Johnny, like, is the Johnny Quest episode the one about the Rock Johnny Quest movie? Where like the Rock
that is the same. That's the same guy who had that Godzilla movie. That did.
Yeah, I don't know about this
King of the Monsters. It was done by Fred Decker, who did Night of the Creeps and the Monster Squad. Who wrote Godzilla King of the Monsters 3D, and he also worked on that Johnny Quest movie. So the guys who do the podcast, it's like a guy he was a producer on Jodorowsky's Dune, and Josh Miller, who wrote Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, I'm looking through that exactly, and that is the strangest sentence I've ever seen.
Yeah,
yeah, I'm gonna subscribe to this. This sounds like a lot up my alley of what I really like about
the Freddy versus Jason versus Ash one is awesome because they basically go through at first like all the different scripts from Freddy versus Jason, and then because they're like the Freddy versus Jason versus Ash script, eventually to kind of tie all the way back around, got turned into a comic book.
Yeah, which is
cool.
The first trade,
not good.
The first trade is based on the spec script.
Yeah, there's like one particular adaptation of that script. That is just like Link Hara did a review of it. It's not good. It's like really bad, but it's like also just very bad.
From what they were talking about,
I forgot if it's Avatar or Dynamite, but it's very bad versions of both those companies.
Yeah, it's from what they were talking about, it's very similar to the beginnings of the TV show for Ash, except like replacing in like basically the end of Freddy vs. Jason. Freddy tricks Jason to go and get the Necronomicon that was like in his mother's house.
Mm-hmm.
And then he basically, in order to make his powers work outside of the dream world.
Cool.
And that's basically the idea. And Ash is just trying to get the Necronomicon and doesn't want to deal with any of this shit.
Well, yeah, that's kind of his whole thing.
But they have an entire fight. And the whole point is like, they're trying to rebuild Crystal Lake, and they put a giant S-Mart there, and he goes there as the manager of the S-Mart. Because he's like older then. But they basically say the reason it didn't happen, it was like basically, what's their names? What's his name? Did not want to do anything with it, and the only reason he even thought about it was for
Bruce Campbell.
Was for Bruce Campbell, yeah.
Cool.
Because it would have given like a monster payday.
That's true. That would have been
because Freddy vs. Jason made more than any of the other movies ever did solo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's still.
No, we went on a giant tangent.
Remember when we talked about comic books?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, yell
I mean, Frey versus Jason versus Ash was a comic, so we brought it back around.
We brought it back
Good
around.
point.
So
Thank you. This is a
into
business
other
expense.
into other horrific things. Marvel's doing a murder mystery this winter.
Okay.
So they released these two things. I saw the one where it's like there's a mysterious murder, and it's Iron Man, Captain Marvel, the Fantastic Four, Black Panther, and who the hell has the wings?
I mean, that's a couple different people.
Is that Valkyrie? Yeah, it's Valkyrie, the new Valkyrie. Are standing
Jane.
over. Yeah, it's a Jane Foster Valkyrie. Are standing over a body covered in a white sheet.
Cool.
And then the other image is like eyes, and then a white figure saying one will unite them.
Okay, so this is the whole creative team for the book. So incoming number one, and the reason why there's probably so many artists and writers attached to the book is because it's going to be like multiple small stories and like a number one that's going to span off. So incoming number one, written by Al Ewing, Dan Slott, Chip Zdarsky, Kelly Thompson, Greg Pak, Eve L. Ewing, Matt Rosenberg, Ed Brenzen, Saladin Ahmad, Teenie Howard, Jonathan Hickman, Greg Pak, Donnie Cates, and Jason Aaron, with art by Humberto Ramos, Jim Chung, and more.
All right, you said a lot of good names. Why are there so many names?
I assume because they're all like people who are writing big major books at Marvel right now. Like Al Ewing's doing a handful of books. Dan Slott is.
So the idea is like those guys are going to do like a one-off, maybe like in the books that they're writing.
They're probably going to do like a bunch of short, like 2 to 3 page stories, like in this book, with it all being tied into the very last story in the book. That's basically the reveal of who dies in this book.
Oh wow! The other thing, I actually misconnected it in this link. They're actually finally doing something with Hulkling. About fucking time.
I think it's about time they do something with like all those young Avengers.
Yeah, but Hulkling's finally doing the thing that he should have been doing, which is unite the Kree and the Skrulls.
Oh yeah, but I mean, it's like the Young Avengers have been like that book ended in 2015, 2016. And that was like a really good run. That was like 16 issues, but like Hulkling and Wiccan weren't really a part of that book. And I feel like, it's about time. We could use a new Young Avengers book right now.
Yeah, especially with like what seems to be them building up a roster for an eventual movie at some point.
That's the hope.
Among the MCU, especially with the casting news this week.
But yeah, with there are like a bunch of other like teaser images that have also come along with this incoming book, with some coded words: a galactic threat, a titanic division, a deadly alliance. And the deadly alliance shows a page of Magneto, Apocalypse, and Xavier holding a Krakoa flower. So basically, it's like whatever happens after Hoxpox is going to continue into incoming. A glimpse of eternity, a mysterious murder. So, and then one will unite them.
That's pretty divisive.
Which I guess is Hulkling. So
really,
a cosmic battle for unity with Hulkling and the Kree Skull War.
Cool.
Yeah, well, Hulkling is the child of a high-ranking Kree and a high-ranking Skrull. He's like the one destined.
Didn't know that. Cool.
Yes, he's the chosen one.
He's the chosen one.
But yeah, we'll probably know more about this when it launches in December.
Yeah. All right.
Or at least New York Comic Con.
Just say that Shazam got pushed back again till November. That book is really weird that it keeps getting pushed back. It's 19 weeks late.
Wow. That's a lot.
All right. So I have not read this what do you call it, the Suicide Squad thing, but does anybody know what is up
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah,
To
so DC is launching a new Suicide Squad book for December. That'll be written by Tom Taylor and Bruno Ronaldo, who people would probably know as the creative team for Injustice 2, the comic. But Tom Taylor has kind of like become like this big superstar writer over the last 2 years, doing like a lot of really cool stuff, like all new Wolverine, X-Men Red over at Marvel. He's doing Spectacular Spider-Man, which I hear is pretty good. And then over at DC, he's writing Deceased, which is
that's the zombie apocalypse thing.
Oh, okay.
Which people seem to be really liking.
Well, it's
And
not as zombie as like zombie. It has to do with like the anti-life equation.
Yeah. It's not like Halloween horror. It's just basic horror.
Yeah. So this is going to basically be the new team of Harley Quinn, Deadshot, King Shark, Zebra Man, who I think is the Cavalier, and then there's a female character in the background who's wearing Kamina glasses. I do not know who she is. Someone suggested that she could be Magpie, or she could be a new,
maybe.
or she could be a new character.
Thank you for the comment and drop. Thank you.
Yeah. But you know, there have been like other character designs he's been dropping on Twitter of characters who might also show up in this book. So who knows? I know that personally, I will probably give this a try. I've not really given any of the new Suicide Squad books really a try.
Same.
Because I mean, you know, I got into like that concept of a team when Secret Six was hitting it, and I loved that book. And since the new 52, I just kind of felt it's like, well, it's not Secret Six, and it's not as good as Secret Six, so like, why should I read this? And then they just kept on like putting on worse and worse people into that book, and
well, because the book basically became like Harley's second book. That's kind of what it turned into for a point.
And I don't mind Harley being on that book.
No, she fits on the team. It's just like it was treated as like Harley and her team of like suicide people, like Suicide Squad.
Yeah. And yeah, hopefully this is good. Because I'd love to read a book with these characters. I love King Shark.
Yeah, and these
Like,
two other characters that he has kind of put on here look interesting. Thylacine sounds interesting because that's the name. That's like the, what do you call it? The Latin name for the, oh my god, Tasmanian tiger.
Cool.
But cool. Yeah, I don't know. I like Tasmanian tigers. They're a extinct species now, but they can open up their jaws like crazy. I'll have to find a picture.
Cool. Well, I mean, animals are always rad. Nature's fucking cool.
But yeah, that's all the news for the week.
Yeah.
All right. So how's the doomsday clock? Is it still ticking? You think it can reach midnight by the end of the year?
Well, so the newest issue came out last week. I'm just gonna open it up so I can like flip through it real quick. So it kind of goes through, and this is very similar to, trying to think, one of the original Watchmen books, where like it's kind of like 50 things are happening at once simultaneously. So like Wonder Woman's battling Giganta, and basically what you find out is the Themyscirians, basically the Amazonians, just like come and bind her and drag her back to Themyscira, so that they can get her out of this whole thing. Black Adam goes to DC and basically like at the White House is like, this shit's over, like all this is done. And we have like some background where the government is kind of trying to talk about, because they are like, yeah, so the Superman theory isn't really real, but it's like sort of real because Professor, what the hell's the guy with Firestorm?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, that he was actually working on this thing, but he only really created Firestorm. And then while this, we have Lex and Lois are like going through, and Superman's kind of recovering. And then we have Ozymandias like in his thing, and he has, I can't remember the one guy's name, but the one who had the ring with the genie, who was one of the Justice Society guys. And then he also has Saturn Girl captured, and he's kind of like, Ozymandias is doing his whole thing of like, oh,
Are you talking about Thunderbolt?
Yes, Thunderbolt.
Oh God, that guy
Yeah.
sucks. Jeff Johns has been trying to make Thunderbolt work for like ever, and I don't know why.
It was his name, like Johnny Thunder is like the guy.
His name is Johnny Thunder, and his name is Thunderbolt.
So, but he's like an old man, like he's like in his 70s, and he's like, so I've been going through, is like, oh yeah, this is how I set everything up. I'm the one that made this all stuff with the stupid cat. And basically, like, after I was going to try to bring Dr. Manhattan to my world, but screw that world. I'm going to stay here because there's more people like us. And just going through his whole plan. And probably the parts that everyone's going to talk about is that basically Lex reveals to Lois that the picture that Dr. Manhattan always has of him before he changed with his wife, he has found it all over the world from different time periods. Like, I can't remember if he has like a specific number, but like 500 times. So somehow every time Dr. Manhattan's like jumping through time, he's dropping this picture. So that's how they're kind of going to figure out like when all this stuff was. Superman gets like, cops kind of go to arrest him, but then he leaves. And basically the kind of the ending is that Ozymandias is like talking to Saturn Girl, and he's like, don't you get it? Like, I don't have to kill Superman. It's like the future that you came from doesn't really exist anymore because I changed it. And she basically is like, oh shit, and kind of fades out of existence because her like future doesn't exist anymore. I guess is like one of the big things. And Alfred tries to go talk to Rorschach. And and basically it ends with I'm gonna call it Black Adam goes to like the White House with like all of his like super people that have sided with him to basically like say like, you can't kill us all.
Wait, to
the White House.
Why is the White House trying to kill all the superheroes?
Because of the thing that Firestorm did, because of Ozymandias.
But like, what is the White House gonna do to kill like all these superheroes?
Yeah. It does basically end with like Superman stands up and turns around and Dr. Manhattan's there, blue dick all waving out in the open.
With his little ding ding swinging in the air.
Yes. And basically it just ends with them staring at each other and the clock is like right at about to turn to midnight. And
then issue 12 comes out, and the first page
2021.
The first page is Superman looks at Dr. Manhattan, and Superman's like, put on some pants.
Yeah. And then yeah, it's a long wait for an issue that's just basically like, there's almost no dialogue in it. There's like, it's all like a monologue of Ozymandias talking about everything except for the part with Lex. And it's kind of just like, I don't care anymore. Like, I know we talked about it, but it's been so long, and there's no way that this pays off in any sort of way.
I feel like everything you're describing should have happened 4 comics ago and not as the penultimate issue.
That's what we talked about a while ago. Like, the book is so boring until you get to like issue 6 and it starts to kick off, which I think is the issue when like Firestorm turns everyone to glass. And that was in the summer. Was that like May or June?
That was in the springtime of my youth when I was just a young lad. I remember when Firestorm turned all those people to glass. Is a distant memory.
Yep. All right. So let us talk about, what did they call it? Hopox?
Hawks and Pox.
Hoxpox.
Hoxpox. So that's like a cool new beat.
That's an old man sigh. All right. So House of X #4 came out last week. So
everyone's dead.
Yeah, I do like the idea of them combining powers. And I was like, oh, I actually now recognize this one mutant that's in this team when she changed into her mutant form. I was like, oh, I had that action figure.
So the basis of this issue is that they go to that satellite base to destroy the mother mold before it turns on, because they believe that once the mother mold turns on, then that will activate Nimrod, that
Yeah,
will
Nimrod
lead
will
to the
be
future that we've been seeing in Powers Effects.
yeah. But we do get to see, I do think it's interesting. So it's Beast, Storm, and who is the other character that like connect with the cuckoos and like form one brain to basically like do a 3D representation of their communiques with Jean Grey.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I actually can't find my issue right now, so I couldn't look it up.
Yeah, I'm trying to see who it is.
Here, I'll go grab it. It's in the.
I have mine, but I'm trying to look and see if they actually say their names. I don't see them saying their names.
But yeah, like there's like this mission that's supposed to happen, and it's all like kind of set up in a way that they ain't coming back.
Well, we saw it in the last issue where, like, at the end of the issue, the guy blows up the Blackbird, the other Blackbird. So
but yeah,
when we cut to it, basically, two of the people are dead already. Archangel, and Husk are already dead. Jean is like kind of jacked up. Wolverine is like missing a gigantic chunk of his body. He's already having to hold his left hand.
I mean, that's pretty canon already. That's pretty normal.
Yeah. So they break up into 4 teams, or like 4, like they split up. So it's Cyclops, Nightcrawler, Wolverine, and Mystique go in, while Jean and the other characters stay aboard. And because they're like going to blow up the 4 things, so it drops into the sun. And I believe the ones that get done quick, like Nightcrawler takes his out super fast. And then Wolverine has some issues. They go and storm the ship. Jean gets put into a pod. The other girl stays. She ends up getting killed. Cyclops takes his out. And then Mystique's going to do hers, and they shoot her out of a goddamn airlock. And she's goddamn dead.
Good night. A lot of people died.
Yes. And Jean's like, oh shit, what do I do? And then like Scott's like, don't worry, I'm going to come and get you. And I'll just like use my solar things to kind of shoot us back into like the moon. And then they get Scott, and Scott's fucking dead. And then
he gets a shotgun blast to the head.
Yeah, he's like dead hard. Well, he's like,
hard.
No, you gotta go. And then Wolverine and Nightcrawler are like, well, we can't let them all die in vain. And basically they're like, all right, will you be able to hold it long enough? And he's like, yeah. So Nightcrawler bamps them outside. He dies instantly. Wolverine's like burning up, and he breaks the final thing, and they drop Mother Mold into the goddamn sun.
And presumably Logan as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What's her name? Omega Sentinel takes Scott down, and then the woman just blasts Scott in the straight up face. And you see blood and his visor go flying. And then Jean gets crushed by the Sentinels in her pod, and they're all dead.
Yep. It's brutal.
And the book ends with Xavier saying no more.
Yeah, and then just like a bunch of like ads.
So
they're not ads.
I'm back. I think my theory is to go back to like our theories. Like I think my theory of them all being cloned.
Yeah, if we were to go back to the issue 1 where people are like coming out of their Matrix pods.
Yep.
Yeah, which is like a little annoying when you read like articles this week when people are like, "Oh, the X-Men are all dead. Like, what does this mean for the future of X-Men books?" I'm like, are you guys not reading the book? Or it's like, it's again going back to that thing from before. It's like obvious clickbait, to get people to click on their stories to, without really doing any kind of good writing on their part. But
I mean, they just have to rely heavily on a headline.
Which I think them being clones and them being in those pods, I think, directly leads into the conversation at the beginning of the newest issue of Powers of X.
Mm-hmm.
With Magneto.
Oh, Sinister?
Yeah, with Magneto and Xavier in Year Zero going to Bar Sinister to meet up with the gaggle of Sinisters.
The absolute gaggle, the assortment of Sinisters in different clothing and
Which is
attire.
like a really cool callback to Kieran Gillen's Uncanny Run, because he wrote a big thing about like a colony of Sinisters, and there was
did
like
he?
one true, yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool, actually.
And also, like, the idea of Bar Sinister is a idea from, it was like one of the Battle World levels.
Yeah,
Worlds.
areas.
So I think that's like a kind of like a really fun callback.
It is. No, I think it's really cool. I thought the whole area was designed really cool. This is coming from somebody who's never seen any of this before. Just Bar Sinister seems rad.
But Sinister was very weird in this book.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, he was.
So you guys are talking. I've never seen Bar Sinister before. Is that like a thing that's been in the past?
Yeah, that was an area in Battle World during Hickman's Secret Wars run.
Oh, okay.
But the idea of like a colony of Sinisters is like a callback to Kieran Gillen's run on Uncanny X-Men.
It makes sense. It's a guy who's constantly cloning and doing these genetic manipulations. It's just weird that he would make versions of him subservient, and some of them are also women.
Yeah.
Or is it that everyone in the court is him?
Well, okay. So like, and that's like a callback to also the Kieran Gillen run, because there was a female Sinister that was running around for like a little bit. And it was like kind of, I mean, you know, Mr. Sinister is glam as fuck and kind of doesn't really care about like gender conceits. So it was like the idea of him making a female body for himself was like kind of a rad idea. It's like, you know, the same reason why female Loki was kind of a fun idea.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you like were here, like, but basically it's like the death of the X-Men directly leads, I feel like, into this conversation where Magneto and Xavier are like, hey, you're all about cataloging DNA. We want you to catalog, you know, the X gene DNA of all these people.
We want you to catalog our DNA just in case.
Yeah.
I'm trying to. I think this is before, because they say this is X0.
Yes.
At the beginning.
So like, and that supports the theory that the pods coming out are based off of this sinister like plan.
Yeah. So I think that this doesn't take place before the other one. Maybe this takes place before the other one.
This conversation between when they go to Bar Sinister is before everything that happens like in that previous issue.
Yes.
Like,
okay.
Like everything in this issue except for the stuff in like year 1000 is like before the events of like the last issue. Because even the stuff with Doug Ramsey going to Krakoa is before. It's like that's them terraforming the new island nation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And learning about the background of Krakoa was really interesting as well.
Yeah.
But before we get there, like, I do think it's interesting that like we get the kind of classic Sinister that pops in and kills the other one with like the crazy cape.
Yeah, but
I love that cape.
He also doesn't sound like Sinister, really.
No, he's jokey as shit. And he also has a gun.
Yeah, which I like was thinking like literal like shower thought, because I was thinking about this book like in the shower this morning, and like I literally like kind of like popped in my head because I was thinking about how Sinister was talking. I was like, it's very weird that he was talking that way. But you know who he sounds like?
Who?
He sounds like fucking Nimrod.
Dude.
Do you remember those previous issues where Nimrod was like jokey
he's got,
and
like,
weird?
A sense of humor?
And it was like, I'm like, why is Nimrod acting this way? And then like Sinister is acting this way, and I'm like, and like you have like the back matter of like what makes a Nimrod, and that's all based around like nanosentinels making their way within like an organic material. It's like, did Sinister like allow himself to be taken over, like, or a version of himself to be taken over by nanosentinels to become the new Nimrod?
Well, they do
Hmm.
talk
That's-
about how in the Martian cloning pits they turn on him eventually. So maybe.
and that's the Nimrod that we see like later on.
Yeah.
So did you read all the Red Diamond stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't
You-
understand half of it. but-
Okay, because there is a
You
couple
mean
of like
Mr.
key
Sinister's
things.
burn book?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the one thing is, so this Sinister, the mutant one, his mutant gene comes from Thunderbird.
What does
Yes.
that mean?
So-
Thunderbird.
It's what's his name? What's his name's brother, right?
It's Warpath's brother. James Proudstar was a part of the Uncanny X-Men #1 team, the one that has like Wolverine, Storm, and Cyclops, and they go on that mission. And in the first issue, James Proudstar dies. Like, it kind of sucks, but that's essentially the character of James Proudstar. Is
I'm
that he
trying to remember what
died?
his power is because him and Warpath have basically the same power. Isn't it like? I feel like it's something with their like goofy knives. They have like a very. I'm gonna have to Google it. But there's another part of like one of the things. The last one, the 10th secret. Where they're like, "Oh, well, we replaced the one that can be brainwashed a long time ago, but don't tell anybody." Shh.
I'm sorry. James Proudstar's Warpath. John Proudstar's Thunderbird.
Okay, yeah. So he
Thun-
specifically says Thunderbird.
And Thunderbird had superhuman strength, speed, and stamina. His senses were also enhanced.
He's basically
s-
Captain America.
He's basically a
Okay,
really
cool.
strong dude.
Yeah, that's why he's like always part of the brother's always part of the X Force. But yeah, the last secret basically is like, oh, basically the guy that like, oh, we're gonna turn off that part of your brain. It basically says like, he can't have that happen to him.
Mm-hmm.
Like also like there is a lot of shit that has to deal with Inferno in his burn book. Like the whole entire idea of the Sinister Secret #3 is all about Madeline Pryor.
Yeah. I thought about like I was like, oh, that's like directly, and then it's also like so on this island is Cyclops. I was like thinking that so like in this Cyclops is with Jean, but Emma's also there and Wolverine because we've seen Emma go and get Sabretooth.
Mm-hmm.
So who is Scott with? Because it definitely seems like he's with Jean, doesn't it?
Yeah. At least from what I can tell.
But he hasn't been with Jean in a long time.
Yeah, that's how you know some fuck shit's going on.
But yeah, like I'm trying to figure out like if people have put together the 10 questions of the Red Diamond and seeing if people have answers for most of them, because I imagine there is someone.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I think like the cool idea of Hoxpox so far is that it's like one of those things where they answer one question, then they give you 5 more, and I think the fun thing about it is to discover the stories with other people.
Well, yeah, it's one of the fun things about doing this part. So, like, because when we get to the Krakoa part, we get this whole backstory on it where it's basically like, oh, fucking Apocalypse saved Krakoa and banished his original 4 horsemen with the other half of the island into another dimension.
Mm-hmm.
Which also ties into the burn book stuff where, like, Sinister basically says, like, yeah, if those guys ever return, he's going to ditch anyone else.
So there's also like the part. Okay, so yeah, okay, so we're on the part with Xavier and Doug Ramsey being on Krakoa, and Xavier in like this weird, like safari outfit, and I don't understand why.
Yeah.
But Doug Ramsey's talking to Krakoa. They discover, this kind of hidden secret about Krakoa, how he's like 2 halves and he's essentially lonely.
Mhm.
And Doug Ramsey's going to be there to kind of terraform everything. But there's like a panel where he's like walking by and he touches like one of the plants. And you know how like like one of Doug's arms is like kind of warlocky,
Yes.
and then he like touches like one of the plants, and the plants become like techno
Yes.
organic.
I'm looking at it right now. Yes.
And then you go back to that line about what is it in part 10 of the Burn book, where Sinister's talking about someone being brainwashed. Which brainwashed mutant Sinister was replaced long before a certain bald somebody knew and had been on the game for almost as long as the game had been played. It's like, is Doug Ramsey the one that's been brainwashed, and that's why he's like the one implanting the techno organics thing within Krakoa, and then Doug Ramsey basically spends the whole entire year of basically setting thing up on Krakoa to set up the plants, the
Well, it
the
ties
flowers.
into like we saw in the one future where him and Krakoa are fused.
Yeah.
And then we also see when we get to the next part, kind of after the apocalypse, where we jump into the future
With the phalanx.
Yeah. What did you notice? What they look like and their colors, and
Yeah.
they look just like him. So maybe the blue people. Well, the blue people have had Nimrod, but is this phalanx thing like Krakoa Cipher in this universe? You're in this timeline.
Maybe it shows the advancements of mutantdom compared to humans. But I feel like this question and answer, this last half of the book will be answered in the next issue.
Well, yeah, that's when we get back to your like your red stuff. But it also we do get the before we get to like the end part, there's that like tree where we get like so Sage is the transit monitor, Black Tom Cassidy's defense, Trinary is external systems, Beast is data, and then there's like the fifth one, which is like like a skunk's work, so like a Black Ops group,
like Forge working deep within Krakoa, working on something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, then we jump to that. What is it, like X3 or whatever they call it? X3, the year 1000.
Yeah,
and that's where we get these aliens that very much look like Cypher's arm.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it touches that orb.
Yeah, then that feels like an exact callback to that panel you're talking about, where the everything the leaves change.
Yeah, there is parts of him though, this like Phalanx character, that are kind of Ultron-y looking, but they're also kind of Asgardian looking, with like the head parts.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, because there's several of them. I think there's here like 3. And one kind of has a Galactus-y looking body. If you look in the panel of the 3 of them, it'll be interesting. Then they break apart and they form a singular like orb. And then the end is kind of, again, closes out with a Professor X quote where it's like, I'm not afraid of what I've done, but I do fear what it will cost one day.
Yeah. Well, whatever this orb is a direct a direct reaction to what Charles Xavier is doing in the first year. So I'm interested to see how that pans out, how they connect those dots.
Although looking at the final panels, it is interesting that like the 2 people look like they could be Moira and Xavier at the end with Nimrod.
Well, yeah, that is a good point. One could be like Moira I get to a certain degree, but Charles?
He could do the goofy like mind transfer thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to go with what you said, next week is one of those red issues, and the last one was the Moira X reveal.
And that changed a lot.
Exactly.
So I'm really hoping next week's issue is...
Yeah, because they give a kind of the covers of House of X6 and Powers 6 in the back, and it's Storm and Emma, and it says The Inevitable Future, and then the other one's The Inevitable Truth, and it's Moira and everybody else is dead. So it is interesting. I hope somebody takes all the stuff that's in Krakoan and just translates them and puts them up online. I would like to find that.
Me too. I would like to know what the end splash is about.
Mm-hmm.
That's all my thoughts on House and Powers so far. Hawks Pox.
Yeah, same here.
All right. So, do we want to move on to our question?
Sure.
Okay.
So, John, since you had one last week, it was your question. So, do you want to reveal that?
Yeah. What was? Okay, let me look up the exact wording that I came up. What C tier or lower tier character you like to see get highlighted more in comics? And like, I put a caveat where, not on major team for last 5 to 10 years. So it's like no Detective Chimp, no like no one's been on a like major tier book basically. And also not a character in any TV show or movie in any substantial amount. So like no Heat Wave, but you could suggest like Bug Eye Bandit. It's like if they show up like once, like if they're like a one-off character, like that's fine. I also like brought up an example of Jack of Hearts, who's an Avenger at one point, but that dude has been out of the game for so long that he's back down to being like a D-lister, or a
Mm-hmm.
C-lister.
Okay.
So those are like my caveats for the question, to basically set up whatever.
All right.
All right, Lou. I really hope you want to go first because I need time.
All right. So I kind of talked about before we started recording with John to make sure that my character was good for this. So talked about him for like a half second earlier because he's partially being used right now in a book, but he's very, very much a side character. And that is the question. I love the question.
Which one?
For me, Vic Sage. I know most people prefer Renee Montoya. It really doesn't make a total difference to me. I would like to see either of them or both of them running around. But I specifically like Vic Sage more because I like his I like how kind of crazy he is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I looked at his Wikipedia. Is he related to Zaz?
Vic Sage?
Yeah, it says his real name is Charles Victor Zaz.
I have no idea.
All right, I'm gonna have to. That's for another time. But like I've always liked the character, like the more modern idea where I kind of like this idea of this conspiracy kind of character, and that everything that he questions everything. And I feel like there's so much they could do with him currently, with this whole kind of tying into real world stuff with like fake news and like you know online bots and stuff like that they could really do a book about kind of a more pulpy detective book, because we don't really get that, I feel like, especially in the big two. But there's so much like that's kind of out there that they could do for him, not necessarily like he's going up against a bunch of villains, because that's not really who he is, but kind of unraveling the like bigger like questions in the DC universe. He hasn't been seen in kind of anything since like Justice League, I think. I think he's been mentioned in a couple of other things, but like, yeah, he hasn't really been mentioned in anything. He had a terrible, terrible version of him in New 52, and we really haven't seen him until he's had these like little kind of shots in Leviathan. So I really am hoping that they're bringing him back. Okay, I literally just saw it. So it was just he is not related to Victor Zaz. They just happen to have the same name, which is why they dropped that when he became a DC property and changed it to Vic Sage.
Probably works better.
Yes. But like I love the character design. I love like the faceless mask. I just think that there's so much they could do with him. And if they even want to tie in Renee in some way as either his partner or that he's like kind of she's his liaison with the police. Like there's just so much to do, and especially since they're like I as we just talked about Doomsday Clock, maybe instead of playing with those characters, we actually do the characters that they're based on, which Question is one of them. So like I feel like there's just a ton that they could do with him right now that would work perfectly. I guess that's just about it for my argument.
All right.
All right, that was solid. Okay, for my counter argument, I was very scared because, as it's become very clear in this podcast, I don't really know much about comics, aside from all the big names. So when you said C-list character, I mean, I kind of started to panic. But as far as C-list characters that I really appreciate, and I would really like to come back more, I guess the argument can be made that he is kind of coming back. I'm a huge fan of Sabretooth. My dad was always a big fan, and the X-Men comics he gave me as a kid almost entirely featured around Sabretooth. So I'd like to see him come back as like a Nemesis style or maybe even anti-hero style character along the lines of Logan to fill in the shoes without constantly needing to bring Wolverine back to life. Sometimes you just need to let a character die for a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of the whole bulk of my argument.
There was a character who used to hang around with Sabretooth for like a couple issues, and her name was Birdie, who I super miss. Have either of you ever played Marvel vs. Capcom, the first one?
Like the old one?
No.
Yes.
And you
What
know
does
that
Birdie
girl
look
that
like?
and you know that girl that comes out with him in his wind pose sometimes?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking it up now.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's her. And she like shows up for a couple issues, and she's like stabbed to death by Green Creed. But it's like one of those kind of characters where I was like, man, she was like kind of really cool, and she's like partners with Sabretooth, which I feel like when like later on, like they teamed up like Mystique and Sabretooth way more.
Mhm.
But I thought it was always like kind of cool that there was like this Rob Liefeld-esque design girl with a big gun who hang around with Sabretooth.
Mhm.
But you know, she was also like a mutant. She had like basic telepathy and stuff, but
Well, yeah, she's got to have some sort of mutant power to associate with Sabretooth. That's cool. Yeah, no, I'm gonna check out some of this. I'm looking at her right now on Google Image.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if she's this character that Neil Adams used at one point. In his book First X-Men. Because there was a
like
female character that Sabretooth was very close to in that.
like literally she shows up like in like his miniseries for a couple issues and then like is killed. Like a Green Creed like stabs her and kills her.
Bummer.
Yeah, it's a pretty big bummer.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh hey, like what a cool character. Like
Mhm.
they could have done something with, but oh well.
Gotta kill him. Bummer. So the male character has something to strive for.
Yeah, right. So any other suggestions?
Well, that was like my main one. If we want to go with like kind of other ones, the ones I kind of thought of were, like I lost them. I kind of would like to see like a solo Tim Drake. I don't know. He's like on his own, like a D-list character.
He
Like
is he is absolutely not. He is a B-lister.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I feel like he's always the first, and he's like my least favorite Robin, but he's like always kind of like the other one.
Wait, Tim Drake is your least favorite Robin?
Yes.
That's a hot take.
Really?
That's a
For sure.
strong
Yeah.
hot take. Like at least like people are like, oh, Jason Todd's my worst Robin.
No, specifically as Robin, no. But like kind of as a character, I think Tim Drake is the least interesting.
Oh, I highly disagree with that.
Yeah, I
Like Tim Drake is the only Robin who became Robin because of his own intellect.
Like he had to earn it. He had to find everything himself.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
Like everyone else either lucked into it, fell
He's
into
the
it through
smart-
tragedy,
he's
or
the smart
were
Robin.
bored into it.
Yeah, he's the smart Robin. So like, I don't know. He's the one I don't really care for as much. Which is funny that that's the one. Like, although like I like, maybe it's the part of me like I like detective kind of these stories, and that's the one part of him I like more than the others.
God, there's like so much good things about Tim Drake for like until Brad Meltzer kind of ruined it. He was like the only Robin, like or the only Batman character who wasn't affected by some major tragedy within his life.
And I think it's probably him or Dick are like my bottom two.
And Dick?
Yeah.
Oh man.
I like
What?
I like Damien and Jason. Like I like those characters.
Okay.
I mean, like
Okay.
I like Damien too, but like, I think it's like fair that I think the most interesting things with Dick Grayson are him as Nightwing.
But like I think that he ends up being very boring and like one note for most people. Like when they write him, like I think the most interesting Dick story was when he was Batman. Like
God, I kind of feel
That's
feel
true.
like almost,
that was a great story, though.
I feel like almost scrapping like every conversation we've had so far and just make it like argue your best and worst Robins.
That was a pilot episode for this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we definitely did that.
Yeah, that was the pilot episode, or it might have been the first episode we ever.
And you said your worst Robin was Tim Drake, and I completely forgot about that.
I think you put a mental block on that, dude, just so you wouldn't have to like relive the trauma.
As an actual Robin, no. I think he's the second best Robin. Like to actually while he's wearing the Robin costume, but as like outside, including outside characters, like outside of being a Robin, I don't really care for him too much.
Okay, fair enough.
I think the problem is like no one's really done anything with him besides like him kind of being a Robin or him being with the Teen Titans, and that's like it. Like he hasn't really done much on his own.
I mean, there was like 150 issues of Robin. They were all about Tim Drake.
Definitely did not read them.
And I didn't read like a whole lot of them, but I know because it's Chuck Dixon, and Chuck Dixon's like one of those guys I kind of don't want to go back and read stuff about for a lot of different things. But I've heard like that stuff is pretty good. I know that his relationship with Stephanie Brown also starts in that era. And I've heard
that part I do kind of like his relationship because it's the most stable of all the Robins relationships, and I like their relationship.
Yeah, you mean the relation? I mean, are you sure you're not talking about Dick Grayson, who like at any given time is balancing 3 different women?
Yeah, well, depending, yeah, because was it Well, it's always Starfire and Batgirl, and then I don't really remember. There's always others, but like those are the main 2.
He always like is dipping his wick like all around everywhere. Like honestly, it's just like there's like it's like who's the biggest like whore of the DCU. It's either Dick Grayson or it's Roy Harper because they're just everywhere.
They're constantly.
Roy Harper hasn't been doing that in a long time.
Well, Roy Harper ain't doing much anymore.
Well, right now, yes, but I mean, like after he had I don't know. I don't think of Roy as that way. It's definitely Dick. I'm trying to think. I don't know. Like I feel like Batman, like Bruce gets around, but I don't think he actually has sex with anybody in my head.
Bruce?
Yeah. I feel like he only really has sex with Catwoman.
He has like 5 women. Like
yeah, but how many of them
there's like him, there's Silver St. Cloud, there's like the random one-off character who shows up within a book. There's Talia.
Yeah, I mean, but does he actually like he never actually like goes after like the only one that he actually ever tries.
I mean, they had a kid together.
Yeah, but she like stole his. He was drugged and she stole his junk. And they made like a test tube baby. Like she didn't carry a child. Also, Dick Grayson got raped once.
Yeah, we
What?
don't talk about that.
What?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
no,
you
no,
didn't
no,
know
no,
that?
no, no. I didn't know that. I feel
Yeah.
like I should know that.
It's like
Yeah.
a very, very bad, weird story.
It
Was it
happened.
Tarantula?
Yeah, it was Tarantula. I forgot who was writing that book at the time.
Oh my god.
It's
It
not,
doesn't matter
it's not
who's writing the
good.
book.
It kind of does.
Actually, you know what? I take
You know,
that back.
if you
I
want to
need
like,
to avoid
if you
that
want to know
person.
if you want to know who to avoid,
uh, comics are fucking weird.
Oh my god.
So John, have you decided who's the winner? Have you
Um,
tabulated the votes?
I'm looking and seeing who wrote this issue first off,
Okay.
because it was Nightwing
It was
93.
Teen Titans issue 2.
Devin Grayson, writer, penciler, Patrick Zicker. Uh, Devin Grayson, I have not heard about very much. So
I think we know
Okay.
why.
So basically she was like a kind of another was she like another vigilante? And something happened. I don't remember. It has to do with like Nightwing's basically completely incapacitated and she just like jumps him. Like it's
It's
she shows also up later in Secret Six, and she's the one who's like looking for the get out of hell free card, and she's like the catalyst for that story.
let me see. It would
But yeah, that shit sucks.
yeah, no, never
So
mind
okay,
that.
so if I'm choosing between, like, I feel Sabretooth is not, even within X-Men or even within Marvel, like within X-Men, he's like an absolute B-lister. I think
Fair
even
enough.
in Marvel, I still feel like he's one of the more recognizable villains in
Mhm.
DC or in Marvel, and like, and he's been around for like a little bit. He's been a good guy for a little bit recently, but he's still around.
Mhm.
But I feel him showing up in Hoxpox was like a real kind of like return to form.
Yeah, it was
But
cool.
but like Vic Sage, I think is the winner, because essentially
Yeah, for sure.
the last time we saw like true Vic Sage was in 52, which is a comic that came out you
oh
know
god.
over a
No.
decade ago, and like it's a really good send off for Vic Sage.
Oh yeah, that I thought you
You
were talking
know,
about New 52 for a second. I was like, no, that version of
yeah.
Question is horrible.
And he, gives off this really good send off, sacrifices himself, passes on the mantle to Renee Montoya. Renee Montoya is awesome. And then the New 52 happens, and Renee Montoya is dead, because who knows why. And then, instead of just bringing back Vic Sage as the Question, they reintroduce him as part of this
Goofy
trinity
Trinity.
trinity of sin, with Pandora and the Phantom Stranger, and now Vic Sage is some kind of
Well, it's not Vic Sage.
it's some kind of biblical, like, entity.
It's Judas. No, it's Alexander the Great.
Yeah,
Um the Phantom Stranger is Judas and Vic and the Question is Alexander the Great. Apparently they had Vic Sage like in an issue and he was working for like he was one of the people running the Suicide Squad at New 52 at some point.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
afterward. Um, but yeah, and then yeah, and then it's like he has not shown up ever since. And yeah, like, I would much rather have Renee Montoya be the Question, because it's like I don't know. I feel like they're two sides of the same coin. So you could do either or, but I feel there's more story potential with Renee Montoya than there is with Vic Sage. But I would like to see Vic Sage return. I think he's like a pretty cool character.
I like the Vic Sage. like kind of thing. I did look up the story for the Nightwing thing is basically they basically did what is the main Batman story? Nightfall?
Nightfall.
But with Blockbuster and Nightwing. And basically at the end, Tarantula kills Blockbuster. He lets her kill him. And he has a nervous breakdown, and then she jumps his bones while he's basically catatonic.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, no, don't appreciate that. Don't like it. Don't want to support it. Not going to read it. All right,
Yeah.
looks like Lou, you are the champion. Once more.
Yeah, you'll win one eventually, Connor.
I've already won one. I won the first one.
Yes,
Come
that's
on.
true.
Yeah.
No.
No.
I just I'm a big fan of I like detective style comics, so that's why the question always hit me. So I'm a fan of his.
I have another question, John. Just side question. Did it need to be from a specific superhero, or could it have been a protagonist from another major book that just never got a second issue or something?
I mean, you could have done whatever you wanted.
Ah, shit. Okay.
I'm pretty flexible. Okay. So, objection. Okay, what do you got?
I was gonna say Richard Fell from the series Fell. It only got 6 issues, but it was fucking awesome.
I like your idea because I also would have said Desolation Jones.
Okay.
You know, one I just thought of that I would love to see back is I Vampire.
Yeah, Andrew Burnett.
Yeah.
I love Andrew.
Which I'm surprised that he didn't. I think they showed one shot of him in Justice League Dark. But they just I guess they just don't want to touch vampires right now for some reason.
Still trying to avoid the Twilight heat? I don't know.
That Twilight was ended
10 years ago, something like that? Yeah.
A while ago, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else to talk about? We can argue about Robins next week.
Yeah, we can do that again.
No, we could always do. Maybe my question will be who's your favorite Batgirl and why?
Good point. That's a fun one.
I'm trying to think who.
But I feel like the opinions might
Yeah, I'll
be too
think
similar.
of something.
Yeah.
But yeah. Was there anything else anyone wants to talk about before we close out?
No.
Nah, I'm good.
I did want to say that Eric Fedorchuk told me that when he listened to our episode last week, his answer would have been either Grant Morrison or Neil Gaiman on Doctor Strange.
Oh, that's a very good one.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm not an Alan Moore guy, so.
No,
I think
I'm sorry.
Neil Gaiman would have been great.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean Alan Moore. I meant Neil Gaiman or Grant Morrison. Sorry,
I would rather read Alan Moore than Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, I think it's just their trippiness would work really well with Doctor Strange.
But Grant Morrison, I would totally. Didn't Grant Morrison write Doctor Strange?
Did he?
I feel like that would have been a character he wrote at some point.
I feel like that's so far up his alley. He couldn't not have done it.
But then I mean, no one really wanted to touch Doctor Strange in the 90s or 2000s. So that would have been times when he would have been.
Yeah, no, nothing popped up except for people that are named Dr. Grant Morrison.
Oh, Dr. Grant Morrison.
Gotta put the respect on his name.
Yep. All right, so close out. Don't forget to check out all the other shows. We got Smallville Chronicles. We're just into season 5. The main Phantom Zone shows are kind of happening every week, so check those out. Don't forget to check out everything that's part of Los Horrors. So there's all those podcasts, Legion of Tunes, which we have to get back to, as well as everything else. Connor writes there sometimes.
Yes, on occasion I've been known.
So go to loshorror.wordpress.com. Anytime you listen to any of the podcasts, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and please tell a friend to check them out. And we will catch you guys next time.
I love you.
Go read Doctor Strange or Doctor. Oh my God, I fucked up.
Welcome to the Phantom Zone.
And now, comics.